I think we are ready to get started. So what we'll do is I'll introduce quick while we've got this screen up our illustrious panel, and then I think we're going to switch a slide and we're going to have Mike Pisetsky join us virtually. So thanks for joining us. This is the last session for the day. It is a panel discussion with three general counsels that we are very lucky to have here or virtually here to speak with us. I'm going to introduce you guys very, very briefly. Oh, and there is Mike. Mike's coming from outer space, which is it's a real special treat for us. So thank you for joining us, Mike. So since Mike just popped up, I'll start with Mike. So Mike Pisetsky is an attorney whose background includes advising not only legal, regulatory, and compliance matters, but additionally an impressive background in financing and securities matters in the biotech space. Mike is currently SVP of Operations and Administration and Chief Legal Officer at SI Bone, where he oversees worldwide legal and compliance functions and advises the board of directors on legal and corporate governance matters. Sarah Karlgaard is also joining us. Sarah's an attorney with deep experience in healthcare, legal, regulatory, and compliance issues, technology, and privacy and security. She has experience at a large variety of healthcare companies, including Optum and Allina Health. Today, she holds the position of General Counsel of Canon Medical Systems Corporation, HIT division, where she leads the legal, compliance, and regulatory functions using her extensive experience. And Frank Piskulich, last but not least. Frank's an attorney who additionally has an engineering background, something I can tell you I commonly wish I had when I'm interacting with clients and their manufacturing changes to obscure subassemblies. Frank is a general counsel for Respicardia, Inc., a division of Zoll Medical. At Zoll Respicardia, Frank is responsible for legal, regulatory, and reimbursement issues associated with the distribution of implantable PMA devices. So, thank you all for joining us. We'll dive right in on an issue that we've touched on a little bit today, but I want to dig in on a favorite topic, physician remunerative relationships. So FDA, we've discussed a little bit today that FDA prosecutions and regulatory enforcement have scaled down a fair amount in the off-label space, but there's been a commensurate ramping up of focus on physician remunerative relationships. And that includes several of the high-profile DOJ and OIG cases that Amanda and Mark talked about. Mark referenced the special fraud alert on speaker programs. We've also simultaneously had the pandemic, which eliminated a lot of in-person programs. It may have included food and drink and other opportunities for physician perks. How do you see industry responding to these intertwined shifts? And do you see the decrease in in-person interaction as having, at least momentarily, de-risked industry? Or do you see that new risks are being created as manufacturer sales forces look for new ways to accommodate physicians? And Sarah, I'd love to hand it off to you. Yeah.
So I would say I can't project what industry as a whole is doing, but I am delighted to ride sort of the lower risk wave, right? So I am actively embracing the fact that virtual is so much more prevalent. I just think the risk goes way down, and I think there's been an acknowledgement with my entire organization from a business perspective that those interactions can be really effective virtually. And so I'm watching, but there's just inherently less risk if you're not in person. There's no meals involved. You can control the entire arrangement in the writing, which is beautiful. So that's what I'm seeing right now, and I'm still just watching it.
I would say I've seen a lot of the same as far as in the short term. We've gone to virtual. We do allow virtual meals under the AdvaMed guidance. We did that right away. But again, a virtual meal in a hospital is much different than an evening meal at a steakhouse, much lower risk. So seeing a lot of maybe benefit there, but with any disruption, you sort of see creativity and if you have a good system in place, you get a big disruption, you see a lot of creativity, that's a chance to raise your antenna and sort of look for compliance issues, other accommodations. So I think that's a good question, and we've seen efforts at some of that, not necessarily on meals, but in other ways.
Yeah, meantime.
I will say I do watch a little bit for when it does become back to more in person. It feels a little bit like we're going to have to start over. Like it's from a compliance standpoint, just from the training standpoint, I think it's going to have to be a much more meaningful refresh with the sales force, because I think, memories are short and reminders have fallen in some ways because the risk has been so dramatically reduced. So I do think even just with sales team meetings coming back online, you're going to want to be really at the forefront of those and thinking about these things differently, because I do think we might get caught off guard that all of a sudden things are back and people don't realize that, and in fact some things have changed with some of the guidance, the alcohol, the things like that. So I think there's going to have to be more of a push than you would just see if we would have been just kind of status quo with the last 2 years.
Yes, spring is in the air. I feel it myself when I get out again.
Yeah.
Right? The risk is there. If you're back again, you have a chance again, you're out in front of people again. I think we need to reinforce the issues, and the rules haven't changed.
Well, and the other thing is, with the so-called great resignation, right? I'm sure there's a fair amount of turnover within your teams that are interacting with physicians, and so it's been a long 2 years, and I think a lot of people either have forgotten or they may have come on to the organizations in a scenario when they didn't have to deal with these types of issues. Mike, it looks like you're back with us. Sorry about those glitches. Just wondering if you had any thoughts on this, the kind of decreased in-person interaction, and whether that's de-risked or whether or not you see new risks arising.
I think for a time it may have, de-risked us. I think we de-risked some of this. I think we fairly quickly figured out how to do the kind of virtual in-services. I think, I talked to counterparts at other organizations and, MDMA and AdvaMed and so forth. And I think the industry is still trying to figure out exactly how to react to the special fraud alert and what the stance on alcohol is. I could certainly see, as things get back in full swing, there's just pent-up demand for events. People want to interact more, and I think the point on turnover and retention is very well heard, right? We have a whole group of reps who have come in, or group of employees who have come into the organization. They've probably gone through at most kind of a virtual compliance training, and they just haven't, there's something about a culture that needs to get perpetuated, a sort of compliance culture that needs to get perpetuated through the sort of in-person interaction and coming to the meetings and interacting with the management team directly and so forth. And that's missing, so we'll have to rebuild that.
Yeah, the one last thing that I would add quick is that I'm hearing from clients is that some of these changes with pharma and with AdvaMed, that you're seeing changes that aren't impacting anybody right now, and so they're slow to update, whether they have SOPs that are on point, whether they're trainings. That is not top of mind. We all have more to do than we have time in the day, obviously, and so those things go to the bottom of the list, and so there may be some catch-up as we emerge from all of this as well. I think that might have to happen. So that segues potentially a little bit into the next question, which, as I have mentioned to all of you in speaking with you, you've certainly got your houses in perfect order, no issues whatsoever, but the same can't be said for all of your competitors. And one of the questions that we all hate to hear is, well, competitor X is doing Y, why can't we? I think that dovetails a little bit off the last question. And that may be in the advertising and promotion space, it may be in some of the physician interaction items that we talked about, it may be in reimbursement and coding and the recommendations that they're giving to physicians on that. What sort of challenges do you see competitors creating, and how does it have the opportunity to impact your business, and what strategies would you recommend to manufacturers that are facing those same sorts of issues? Frank, would you mind giving us a start?
When I get that other people are doing this, what can I do about it? There's sort of two responses. One are they really doing something wrong, and is there some way I can align with the sales force to help meet their goals and suppress this unfair activity? So whether it's trade complaints, cease and desist letters, going to the compliance officer of the competitor and saying, hey, are you aware your people are doing this?
Right.
Uncool. That's an opportunity if it's that kind of thing. If it's a race to the bottom kind of issue where, maybe that competitors aren't really doing this, but this is the way they're trying to loosen our controls, I usually just ask, show me what they're doing, let's see it. I think I'm 100%. I've never seen people do things that we're not doing. If people consider me too conservative, that's just a slander. I mean, there's just no basis. That's an unbased slander, right? I mean, but I first try to see it as an opportunity to get on their side, understand, can we do it? Are they really doing it? Can we stop them if they shouldn't be? And then if it's neither of those, then try to understand it better. And it's an opportunity to educate why we aren't doing the thing they want to do.
Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, I would agree, a very, very similar approach, but one of the things that's unique for us, so we develop medical imaging software, that's a medical device, but in addition to the diagnostic medical devices, we have a lot of technology that isn't classified as medical devices. And the complexity for us is that in that space, many of the competitors don't then have medical devices. And so you go to these trade shows or you go to these industry shows and you've got the pure sort of non-healthcare technology companies that are completely unimpacted by the compliance regulations that we are. And so that's one of the things I get a lot is, XYZ company is giving away a car. Well, gosh,
you can't give
goodness gracious. So there's some interesting things. I was having a conversation with someone who's on the board of AdvaMed trying to talk about, is there some sort of hybrid model that should exist? Or instead, if technology players are going to play in the healthcare space, and I give this advice too, they might need to be careful because, sort of be careful what you wish for. If you fly too far in the face of medical device, regulations for the true medical device companies, you might find yourself, looped in with that. But it hasn't happened yet, and so that's just one of the things from a competitor standpoint that we run into and have a hard time trying to navigate, right? Because if it's apples to apples, we do exactly what Frank's describing. We can work through, we can, be nice, we can let them know politely, or we can be not so nice because it makes good sense. But when they're not subject to the same rules, it makes it harder, and my teams are more disappointed.
Yeah.
And Mike, I know in your space, competitors are all playing on the up and up, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right?
Nothing but goodness. Yeah, to pick up on Sarah's point, we have a slightly different version, but a similar problem. So our product is a medical device. We pioneered the device-based solution in this field, created the coding for the procedure, and then we now have close to 30 competitors who also offer devices, as well as a number of companies that are offering competitive products, but they're actually Section 361 HCTPs, or they consider themselves and treat themselves as HCTPs. And these companies, we've seen them just very aggressive, making sort of wild claims that we think ought to put them squarely within the device regulation. But I think there's some question at FDA as to whether or where these products belong, and I think some of these companies tend to fall through the cracks as well. They're smaller companies. So what I like to focus on with our commercial team is, look, we are the pioneer here. We've set the standard. We've developed all the evidence. We sell, an evidence-based product and solution, and we're going to be the kind of gold standard in the business, and not compare ourselves to those other companies. And I think some of that does resonate with surgeons. They'll tell us, SI Bone has done things the right way, and there are other competitors that may play sort of fast and loose with the claims they're going to make, or they'll play fast and loose with the coding they recommend for their products. But it's a constant dialogue. with the commercial organization and explain to them that, look, if you're a small company, you may not be here next year. They're willing to take those risks, and they may not have been through some of the same things that a larger company with experienced kind of compliance counsel is aware of.
I think that's a really good point. I'll just add briefly, I mean, one of the things I try to work with our sales teams on is really trying to understand that the healthcare system, the healthcare providers are also subject to these regulations. So in some ways, leading with a compliance first attitude really does give you competitive advantage, because while maybe in the moment, the physician thinks he's being wined and dined, if that gets back to his compliance function, he's in trouble or she's in trouble. And so you really do have this thoughtfulness around, okay, yeah, maybe it might get you in the door for a half a second, but if you get past the door, right, and the behavior gets to the people who understand whether it is appropriate or not appropriate, you've maybe lost credibility where you felt like you were gaining. So I think that can be really beneficial just as you're, starting out with your sales team and trying to kind of build why this is important.
Yeah, and I think both of you highlight something that I would just reiterate, which is the first thing that we think of is how are we going to interact with the competitors, but how we interact with our own internal sales force is often just as important. Because either one, you're highlighting for them, hey, you're our ears, let us know when these things are arising. But two, it's also you're marketing compliance to your marketing team very often.
And to Sarah's point, finding the right customers and, so that they reinforce your compliance message to the sales people. If we have customers that are asking to do a lot of, maybe they're not the right customers too.
Yeah.
Right.
Great, thank you. Oh, and in the chat, if anybody's willing to take Frank's slander case, please, please just put your information
Cases.
in there. All right, so let's jump across the Atlantic here quick. So most of our focus today has been FDA law and regulation. You all work for companies with global distribution. So a particularly clamorous discussion, I spent a lot of time figuring out what word I was going to use to describe this, but clamorous works, is occurring in industry regarding EU transitions from AMDD and MDD to MDR. And so as certification deadlines are hitting for companies, what sorts of challenges have you all run into in the transition? And Sarah, I actually might start with you because I'm particularly interested in being a software company. I know that there are some unique challenges that arise in recertifications.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any great guidance on how to do it perfectly other than to say early and often. It has been a significant process, and I'm hearing from all of my colleagues that is the case across the board. This has been an enormous transition. The EU regulators and notified bodies just simply weren't ready for it. They're completely understaffed. There's no amount of gnashing of teeth and slamming on tables that will get them to move any faster. And so as a result, you are hoping for the best. You do everything that you can to plan, but even they're committed to deadlines they miss very frequently. There was a process under which, and our company worked really hard to, recertify under the MDD, which is supposed to, then allow you more cushion time to transition to MDR. But the complexity with that being a software company, which is I think what we're getting at, is that only allows you to play in the market so long as you don't make any significant change, which is the sort of amorphous definition, and it's very complicated. And in software, you are making changes all the time. And so even if you have a good rationale that it is not significant and it's appropriate, you are going through hoops and you are doing filings and you are documenting. I mean, it is an incredible impact. So I'm just acknowledging that. If you want to trade war stories, find me after for a cocktail, but it's a challenge, that's for darn sure.
And I can just echo the hopelessness, or not hopelessness, but
We thought doom and gloom was the last
doom and gloom
session.
Part 2 a little bit. I think back to 10 or 15 years ago, medical devices, the plan was get CE mark, commercialize in Europe, show you got some success, get FDA approval, and go on from. That's what we did with our first generation device. Our second generation device is FDA approved and not CE marked and not available in Europe, and it's because of MDR issues and the things we're talking about right now. Some of it is lack of notified body capacity. Some of it is they're not working as well with their competent authorities. That relationship is deteriorated because of the transition to MDR, so they're not working as well with us. So if you can find a way to help the notified body take some of the heat off of them with their competent authority, that's, a strategy, but it's a bottleneck. And yeah, I guess that's it. I'll be there too. I'll be at the bar.
Well, Mike, sorry you can't be at the bar for War Stories, but any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly echo what both Sarah and Frank said. Attack early and often. So that ship may have already sailed for the most part, but get in line with your notified body. I think the other thing is that it seems like the industry is still trying to figure out what is the evidence requirement mean. To get a device into Europe, what's the real level of evidence that's going to be required for different types of devices? And we're on the one hand working through it with thinking through it with our new products, but then with our legacy products where we do have we think we have evidence, but other competitors may not. Is there an opportunity to be one of the few that survive?
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to ask one more question, and I think this one may be of interest to people because I think a lot of, especially general counsels and folks on leadership teams and companies are trying to figure out the answer to this. So we heard from Paul and Bryn earlier about emerging cybersecurity and privacy-related issues. And industry increasingly has alignment on best practices when it comes to cybersecurity, or certainly federal and state regulators and legislators are trying to tell us what the best practices are. But it's not universally agreed upon the ways in which organizations tackle cybersecurity questions or responsibilities. And so in some organizations, it'll fall primarily to IT. In other organizations, it's within legal or compliance. And I guess I just want to know, how have you guys thought through those decisions? And if you'd like to share how you've implemented some of the decisions that have come out of that. Mike, you haven't gotten a chance to go first yet, so I'd love to hear from you on this.
Well, so one, I mean, we don't think so much in terms of the the boundaries between silos. So we're small enough that our legal team works very closely with our IT team. A lot of where we're spending our energy, and there's certainly a lot of it right now in cybersecurity, is thinking about the right governance model. So what's the right cadence to report to the audit committee or to the board? What's the information that they need? Putting metrics beside it and dashboards. And then finally, external audit or assurance, whatever you want to call it. We have external consultants come in regularly and review our cybersecurity program, and it's a constant. I don't think you ever check the box, but it's constant maturing, and that's the trick.
Frank, how about you?
All right. Our legal and IT security work well together. I'd say our IT security is maturing. We've put quite a bit of investment in that in the last couple of years, so I'd say that's maturing quickly and taking maybe some of the lead. I would pull in your risk management and your insurance groups as well, because your cybersecurity insurance is becoming ridiculously expensive, and it's amenable to modification. If you have the right certifications in place, you can bring those rates down. So we're able to find some money for IT security by revisiting our cybersecurity representations.
That's great.
Yeah, I think on our end, we have, again, as software as a medical device, there's cybersecurity and privacy within the development of the products, right? Making sure that the products are secure when they're deployed at a healthcare system. But then there's operational privacy and security, right? How do we manage, and again, we're a global company, so how do we manage employee data? How do we manage support case that might have PHI within it? How do we manage data we get through research? So there's that aspect of it, which is kind of day-to-day operation. And then what about the organizational aspects of privacy and security, right? Who sets the policy for incident response, for use and disclosure, for all of those things? So it's sort of this three-legged stool, between kind of operational privacy and security, kind of the traditional security officers with our security professionals in our technology and engineering function, as well as compliance and legal. And so we, at this point have implemented, more or less a weekly interdisciplinary meeting where we kind of go through the issues, risk rank, try to tackle the ones that are cross-functional, and then disperse throughout the different functions, ones that you can kind of silo at some level. But you get a log4j type incident, and it really is cross-functional in that regard. And so I think, Mike, when you're talking about escalation points and things like that, it really does become more complex than you ever expected, because who's on point, which function is impacted more, and then who ultimately gets to make calls. It is not without its fun.
Well, that's great.
That's right. I would also echo the point about cyber insurance. So we've actually found that very useful. The premiums have gone up astronomically in the last year, but to use us as an example, we were able to get that renewal premium down this year by implementing specific technical safeguards that the carrier required of us. Essentially, they said, we'll write this, but you have 90 days to correct this issue, and we did. And now that carrier, they publish a quarter, or they don't publish it, but they provide us with a quarterly report where they use automated scanning software, and they identify vulnerabilities. And so each quarter we get that report and we go address those issues. So having the right cyber coverage for us has been a real asset.
Well, that's great. Thanks, guys. Well, with that, I know that we're well past time that today's session was supposed to go anyways. So I think we will conclude the CLE now, and with the exception of Mark back in the office and Mike back out west. We apologize to both of you that we can't send you a drink, and we wish you were here. But I think that the bar will, I guess I'll hand it over to Amanda.
Okay. Yeah, I was. I just was checking to see if there's questions, but I don't think there are. Any in the room? No? Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, with that, we will not hold you from the bar any longer. Those of you at home, feel free to get your own cocktail. But thank you so much for joining us today. It was really fun to actually see people in person. And I'm sure hopefully everyone on the phone and online enjoyed the program as well. If you have any questions, we'll be hanging around. Feel free to reach out to us via email or give us a call. But yeah, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening.
And a special thanks to Mike, Sarah, and Frank.
Special
Thank
thanks
you guys.
for our panel.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
very
guys.
much.
Take care, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
Thanks. Bye-bye.